All right, for more, we are now joined by Dullah Omar Institute senior researcher, Dr. Jean Redpath. Doctor, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. So we've seen two witnesses so far today at the Madlanga Commission, of course, the retired city manager finishing off her testimony. Seemingly a slightly different demeanor today. I mean, this was raised quite a bit yesterday with regards to how she conducted herself before the commission, and to a point where she apologized for that conduct, saying that she was a bit nervous having to appear and be cross-questioned, and also conceded to some of the complaints with regards to her not acting out, particularly on those alleged sexual harassment allegations that were sent to her with regards to Chief Mapieye over the years.
Yes, I think her demeanor was changed today, but I think South Africans have still been quite disappointed with what it reveals about governance in that municipality. Yeah.
And I mean, just speaking on that with regards to the governance in that municipality, that issue of the IPID report with regards to Brigadier Mkhwanazi, when yesterday she had said that, in fact, in that previous clip that was shown to her yesterday, where she was questioned about that, and she said, well, she does not see any misconduct on Brigadier's behalf, and if IPID wants to investigate further. But today, seemingly a different tone in saying that she does accept that in hindsight, perhaps she could have acted. What was said to her or how she had put forward with regards to Brigadier Mkhwanazi was invalid.
Yeah, I think people misunderstand IPID's role. IPID can only investigate and then make recommendations. They can make recommendations to the relevant service or the head of that service, so that would be SAPS or Metro Police, and they can make recommendations to the National Prosecuting Authority. And they don't have any power to actually proceed with the matter. So if an entity doesn't act, then their investigation is rendered nugatory.
And then what role does it put for a watchdog such as IPID, who their teeth is only as strong as just those recommendations that you speak of, Doc, whereas then you do have officials that would sit with such a report and act and decide not to act on it?
Well, precisely, which is why we need so much more transparency in terms of these investigations. In some other countries, there's complete transparency around who is investigated for what and what the outcomes are. This operates to protect people who are falsely accused, but it also operates to make sure that we know that some action should need to be taken.
Then we also saw the minister who is on special leave start with his testimony at the Madlanga Commission. We previously saw him at the ad hoc commission, committee rather. Do you think in terms of how he has set the tone, I mean, he came in and spoke that there are some operational matters within SAPS that he can't speak to. When you compare the testimony that he gave at the ad hoc committee and what we've seen so far, very little of it at the commission, what do you make of this witness that we are currently seeing?
He was very much better prepared for this testimony. I think what happened with the ad hoc committee is he was one of the first witnesses up, and so it was, there was a sense that one didn't know what to expect and what kind of questioning would follow. The commission and the ad hoc committee are also very different in how they operate and how their evidence leaders have worked with the witnesses. What he said today, everything he said today made perfect sense and sounded very reasonable in contrast to some of his testimony at the ad hoc committee.
And of course, I mean, his testimony here has been honed to particularly look into the PKTT. He started speaking about its existence. He also spoke about whether or not it would be continued, how in 2020 it was not assessed because of COVID, and in 2021 there was that assessment. Where do you see him going with this, particularly with the PKTT and what has already been put forward, especially by the National Commissioner and General Mkhwanazi?
Well, I think he's preparing the argument to push against the interpretation of Major General van Rooyen, which was that he has no role to play in in a decision such as disbanding a task team. Now, I early on said I disagreed with Major General van Rooyen. There would be no role for a minister if we said on a blanket basis that they couldn't make such political decisions around the spending of vast quantities of money. So on that technical legal point, he's trying to prepare the ground to say that whatever action he took was reasonable and rational, and in the political realm, in the realm of the executive, rather than in the realm of operational instructions.
And what role or impact does that then have when, in the political and executive realm, certain decisions are taken and officials that are then sitting at an operational level are forced to go with those decisions, whether or not they believe it is in the best interests of the unit, of the department, of the work that needs to be done?
Well, I mean, the SAPS has gone through multiple restructuring exercises since its existence in the democratic South Africa. And there's always unhappiness and pushback. And this is in relation to units as opposed to task teams. And where it hasn't been a political decision, it's been a decision of restructuring from the National Commissioner. So there's always going to be unhappiness. But in the case of task teams, what we have here is vast expenditure related to the individuals in the task teams themselves. So they get that money. They get the overtime, the accommodation expenses, the laundry expenses themselves. And so if the task team is disbanded, that expenditure is no longer going to be dispersed on them. So one can imagine that this would result in a vast reduction in the income of those people who are in the task team.
And that vast expenditure, when compared to the impact of the work that is being done by such task teams, do you think it's not worth the spend?
Well, I think that all of the task teams in SAPS need to be reevaluated, and the expenditure on them, not just the political killings task team. If we look at the total over the 6 years, I think it came to 450 million. That's R500 million expended over and above the salaries and the resources, physical resources such as vehicles that were allocated to them. Now, that can buy a lot of detectives, and we are so short of detectives. It can buy a lot of vehicles. Almost every person has heard SAP say to you that there's no vehicle available. So, we are in a constrained resource environment. SAPS as a whole has gone on for a long time spending money in the wrong places. And yes, there may be hiccups along the way in terms of reallocating resources, but it's high time that there is a thorough look at the expenditure within the SAPS.
And I mean, the minister speaks of the PKTT being a team versus it being a unit, and how it was only meant to be in existence for about 6 months and not necessarily 6 years. Maybe let's talk about the composition of the PKTT. Was this different in the methodology that they used of having these specialized skills being put together for it to become a team that would investigate in the way that it does? And is it impossible for us to replicate this across the country in different police stations and different units in order to try and achieve such results?
Well, I actually wouldn't recommend replicating the PKTT structure. It was very short on detectives. It had a lot of kind of response related people, quite relative to the size of the team, a large number of administrators and people at the top level. Again, consuming resources, but not necessarily giving the results that you would want. Now, the PKTT has blamed the prosecuting authority along the way for the lack of convictions that they were able to show for this vast expenditure. Now, that well may be true. We know that the prosecuting authority is also struggling with its work. So yes, there may be some truth in that. But ultimately, a very good case will be prosecuted by the prosecuting authority. So if they're not prosecuting, then it must be because the case is not good enough. And I think what we've also come to see out of both the ad hoc committee and the commission is the poor nature of what some people in the detectives regard as evidence. Much of it is not really evidence. Much of it is suspicion and hearsay. And so, we can see why the prosecuting authority might not have prosecuted in some cases, if that is the nature of the evidence that is being given to them in dockets.
One other issue that the minister raised was with regards to General Khumalo, with him leading both crime intelligence as well as the PKTT, and he spoke about how both structures were quite work intensive. And he, from the onset, did not understand how it is that one person could be the head of crime intelligence and the project leader for the PKTT.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. It's inconceivable that you could do both jobs properly. And so somewhere along the line, one of the jobs might not be done properly. What it would have done is increased his salary because he would have got the additional payments that the members got if he was traveling to KwaZulu-Natal to oversee the team. So there are these, if he was traveling around the province, because the team was operating throughout the province, not in one specific location, which is what justified some of their accommodation and travel expenses. So yes, so I would agree entirely that someone at that level should not have been leading the task team.
We know that on Friday, when the minister returns to the commission, that his legal representative, Advocate Ngugai Tobi, will be cross-questioning him. What do you make of that strategy? It seems as though it hasn't necessarily been taken within the commission, where we see a witness taking the stand. What strategy do you think he's trying to employ with having that side of the cross-questioning happening this early on in his testimony?
Well, I think it's comfortable for him, and he doesn't seem to be very comfortable giving evidence. He's not the kind of personality, a sort of a dominant personality. And so I think this is a strategy to make him be more comfortable in giving evidence.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Redpath. We certainly will be looking forward to that testimony. We know that tomorrow will be Brigadier Julius Mkhwanazi, who has been accused of quite a number of allegations of misconduct within the EMPD. He's currently suspended, and he will be taking to the stand at the Madlanga Commission. Thank you so much for joining us, Doc, this evening.